What's up, everybody? Kraven the Hunter hit theaters this weekend, seemingly marking the end of the Sony Spider-Man universe, and we gotta talk about it. Before we get into my review, though, make sure to subscribe so you're not missing out on daily videos diving into the nerdy news and rumors and speculating on it. But enough from me, let's get into the movie. I'm going to start with the titular character Kraven and Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's the only cast member worth talking about, not because of their talent, but because of the script they were given. Aaron was the only one who really got anything to do, but even he barely had anything to work with in this movie. At the very least, he and his stuntman got to be badasses for a couple scenes in the movie, but it didn't feel like we got much action outside of what we saw in the trailers. I don't know, maybe I checked out after that flashback, which we'll talk about later, but the action that sold me on seeing this movie was cool. It just felt like I'd seen every single bit of it in those trailers. The action was essentially this movie's diamond in the rough. A major part of the rough was Sony doing their thing, wasting Spider-Man's villains. I felt like Calypso, Chameleon, Rhino, and I guess not so much Foreigner, but those first three felt wasted. Calypso got to be a bit of a badass towards the end, but her origin in this movie is just so Sony, which now is a synonym for bad in my head. For one, they do their thing of trying to make these villains less of what they are, villains. They connect her origin to her family and grandma in like a nice, light-hearted, touching way, where what I know from the comics, and again, let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong about this, but to get her powers in the comics, she sacrifices her sister. Then Chameleon was the other one I was truly upset about. For the entire movie, all he can do is change his voice, and then at the end, for quite literally no reason, because the SSU is dead, they have him go get the surgery in New York, and he's now earned being Chameleon. Like, have him do his pre-chameleon powers chameleon work in the movie. That was a mouthful, but like he did chameleon stuff before he could actually be like a true chameleon. If you're going to do this in this movie, that would have been much better, especially if it's not going to go anywhere. Like, at least give us a taste other than that ridiculous scene at the end of the movie. The interesting one, though, is Rhino. While I did think the concepts of him, like, half changing for protection from the stampede were cool, it's like they do it in a car, so you're making him feel smaller than he should, and also, I hate to say this because it's going to sound terrible, but he also felt like Falafel Phil from the Disney show kicking it if his shop went under and things took a turn for the worst. The action wasn't that cool, and the execution, even with the cooler concepts, was very poor. And saving somehow the best for last, the foreigner legit just came in and did his thing, being an assassin, died, and that was it. In fact, they might have focused so much on crafting him in this story in such a smaller role that he just should have been the villain of the movie. They're so desperate to make it all personal with the Rhino connections to Kraven's father and with these characters in this Sony Spider-Man universe, but the best ones in their movies, ironically, are the ones that come in out of nowhere. But let's get out of the doom and gloom, well, kind of, and talk about the action that I mentioned before. The prison fight to open the movie was great, and the movie might have been better if they just extended this sequence into Kraven being there actually for 3 days. Kraven's escape from prison legit sounds better than what I ended up watching. Some of the VFX on Kraven were rough too, like when he's doing his super jump, but to be fair, it's also very good when he's doing his animalistic crawl. They were honestly pretty strong throughout most of the movie, it's just that the visuals overall weren't very strong. Then we got that epic hallway scene when Kraven's trying to save his brother. Add it to the list of great hallway scenes, but I wouldn't say it's towards the top of that list, not just yet. It was just cool to see him go crazy for a scene, which I guess he also did when he was hunting Rhino's men towards the end of the movie. That was pretty great too with the bear trap and the axe to the wood, but again, like we saw this in the trailer, and also it was maybe the best scene of the movie when he splatters a dude with a tree onto a tree. I can't lie, they cooked with that stuff. But then they dropped the ball at the end, as I didn't love the final and only showdown between Kraven and Rhino. It was unfortunately just underwhelming, and that just goes back to how it felt like I'd seen all of the action in the trailers. Sure, it's great to see it on the IMAX screen with the sound around you and the ginormous screen, but it doesn't get the blood pumping when you use all of it for marketing. Anyway, one of the things Sony's been perfect at with these Spider-Man-less Spider-Man villain movies is being unintentionally funny. With this movie, it was that most of the time it was so bad, it was good, which kind of just became a strength for the movie in a weird way. Like, that opening scene happened, and I'd already seen it too, but I saw it in theaters, and I was like, holy shit, were the critics wrong? Is this is this movie actually going to be good? But then the next 30 minutes happened with the flashback, and then the rest of the movie comes, and I just kind of chilled back for the ride, and it was somewhat better that way. Just this is not a great movie. That's really the overarching point in this video. That flashback was really what just killed all of the momentum though that opening scene had built. This movie was also built while the SSU was maybe not alive, but at least planning to move ahead. And I know it's like a me problem here with the nerdy thoughts running through my head during this movie, but it dragged the experience down. It added to that unintentional comedy, but it's also just kind of sad at this point with their Sony movies. Overall, I think this is going to go down as the worst of this despicable Sony universe that they have a stronghold over with their Spider-Man characters. It was another wasted comic book role for Aaron Taylor Johnson. It wasted more of Spider-Man's villains, and it was really just a pitiful goodbye to the SSU. So finally, I wanted to rank the 6 movies from the universe to put the nails in the coffin. Coming in dead last at a 3 out of 10 is Kraven the Hunter, which we of course just talked about. My number 5 is Morbius, which had been my least favorite up until this point at a 4 out of 10, and that one, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think a 4 out of 10 is actually generous. This next one, though, I expect to be lower on most lists, and that's Madam Web. I thought it was like a 5 out of 10, maybe it was Sydney Sweeney, but I didn't think it was the worst thing ever made. It was just so dumb. That, of course, leaves the Venom trilogy for the top 3, and coming in third is Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I'm not deep into the symbiote stories in the comics, so these never held as much weight, like, personally for me, and I always just enjoyed the Eddie Venom duo so much that they all landed here in the top 3. Then the runner-up was Venom The Last Dance, landing at a 6 out of 10, same as Let There Be Carnage, so in a way, those are kind of like a 2A, 2B situation, but I just didn't think Last Dance was a satisfying conclusion, but again, Eddie and Venom are just so damn electric together. And all that leaves taking the crown for being the best of the worst, and the only movie to receive higher than a 6 out of 10 from the SSU is Venom, coming in at an 8 out of 10. This is where they captured the Eddie and Venom dynamic that kept me coming back. It's just the other 2 movies failed to build on it in meaningful ways. In a sense, that kind of reflects the Sony Spider-Man-less Spider-Man villain universe, as they just always failed to build on what they were doing, and they would just switch up the character and do the same thing. It's just none of the other characters got trilogies like Venom because all the movies sucked. And so that'll do it for my review of Kraven the Hunter. I wouldn't recommend you go see this. It's one you can wait for streaming or VOD, whichever you prefer. But if you've already seen the movie, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below and make sure you have a great day.